Right, in the last video I said I was going to talk about indirect taxes and subsidies. I did indirect taxes, but the video was getting a bit long. I didn't want to bring up subsidies there, so I thought I'd bung them in a separate video. Subsidies, well, what are they? Well, it's the exact opposite of an indirect tax. Rather than governments taking money away from firms, if you like, raising costs, we're this time giving firms money as a way of trying to cut their costs. So a simple way of thinking about a subsidy is a grant given normally to producers. So government grants going direct to producers, and the impact on the market will be, if I just draw this market equilibrium diagram, so at this market equilibrium point of P1, Q1, subsidy will lead to supply moving outwards. Okay, the reason is the government have in effect said to the firm, everyone that you produce, we will give you some money. So they've lowered their cost of production by this amount between the two supply curves. This will show me the subsidy per unit. Okay, well, why do governments give subsidies to things? Well, normally it's because they want people to buy more of it. If you put a subsidy on something, it will lead to market prices falling, which means people will buy more. So governments tend to put subsidies on things that they think will raise people's economic welfare. This could be things like subsidising renewable energy, public transport, healthy foods, gym memberships, libraries, sports centres, all sorts of different things. The things that you'd regard as giving you a longer and happier life, in effect. Okay, now if we wanted to know how much the subsidy will cost the government, all we do, we think about what the government has promised. We're at this equilibrium point, and we get the subsidy per unit. Let's write it down again. So for every one that we sell, that is what we're being promised. And the government is saying, well, you've sold Q2, so this shows me the sales. And the government are now thinking, right, for every one of those sales, we've got to give you this subsidy per unit. If I multiply these two sides together, what I get is this huge blue box here. And this shows me how much that subsidy will cost the government. Now, in terms of who benefits from the subsidy, well, what we can look at is, well, the price used to be P1. The price has fallen to P2, which means that the consumer has benefited from this. In other words, this drop in prices across all these different sales here. That means that the producer has kept some of it for themselves. Okay, they've kept the remaining section here. Again, let's think about how elasticity will affect this. If I was to draw a price inelastic demand, and I'll draw a price elastic demand, and what we'll do, we'll add some supply curves. So we've got P1, Q1, we've got P1, Q1. And again, if we were to introduce a subsidy, supply will move out to the right, and the vertical distance between the two is the subsidy per unit. So subsidy per unit. Look at the impacts on the market. We get this dramatic price fall, but demand barely increases. Okay, well, inelastic demand, people tend to remember it by prices increasing. People don't tend to cut their demand very much, things like cigarettes, but it works the other way as well. When price levels fall, your demand for inelastic products is unresponsive. It will not change very much. So for me, personally, lower petrol prices would not drastically raise my demand for petrol. Simply because, you know, I use what I need to anyway now. I would demand a little bit more, but I would still generally demand a very similar amount. For an elastic good, a small fall in price, dramatic increase in demand. And if I wanted to work out the subsidy area, all I do is I go to the equilibrium point, I go up to the original supply, that's the subsidy per unit, I go across to work out the sales, and I get this box here. Same over here, I'm at this equilibrium point, subsidy per unit, all the way across to the sales, multiply the two together, and I get this area here. Right, now what you'll notice is these boxes are very, very different looking. This is what the consumer benefits from, that price drop from P1 to P2, which means the producer must be keeping the rest for themselves to boost their profits. Over here, the consumer only gets a very small drop in prices, but the producer will keep the bulk of the subsidy for themselves. Okay, so in terms of who benefits from the subsidy, it's very much affected by elasticity.